This here looks like a bourbon, smells like a bourbon, and it was aged in a lot of virgin oak, so you might think it's a bourbon, but technically it's not a bourbon. This week, let me tell you about the Barrell Vantage American whiskey. Welcome back to the channel. I'm Matt, I'm the Whiskey Nerd, and like I said, today I'm looking at a bourbon that's no longer a bourbon because it's just too damn oaky. This week, let me tell you a little bit more about the Barrell Vantage American whiskey. And I've reviewed a few Barrell products here on the channel before. I've reviewed like the Dovetail, the Seagrass. I found them to be a really interesting company. They're a blending company where they take whiskeys, as they say on the back here, from Indiana, Tennessee, and Kentucky. And they take bourbons and then or rye and different for the Seagrass, and they finish them in different casks, which means technically it's no longer a bourbon, because for a bourbon it can only be aged in virgin American oak casks. If you introduce anything else, it's no longer technically a bourbon. So they do say on the front here, a blend of straight bourbon whiskies finished in Mizunara, French and toasted American oak. So they don't call it a bourbon, but they do let you know that this is originally bourbon whiskey. So while this whiskey would have originally started its life as bourbon whiskey, it was finished in different ways. And we also don't really know much about the mash bill because it's 3 different whiskeys from 3 different distilleries. We don't really know what the mash bill was. It's at least 51% corn, because it has to be at least 51% corn to be considered a bourbon. But other than that, we don't really know. We don't even know also what percentages of the whiskeys are used in this finished blend, because what they do in Barrell is they take the bourbons and they finish them separately, and then they blend them together to give you different profiles, to give you the right profile. Because some Mizunara casks, if you ever had it, I'll explain the oaks in a little minute, but some of them give really, really strong notes and some will give quite light and subtle notes. So if you want to make a blend consistent, you're going to have to use different percentages of the whiskeys over the course of different batches to make sure it's consistent. So there is no real rhyme or reason to the mash bill, to the blending, just that it is going to be hopefully a consistent product. This here, a little trick for you, if you ever have a Barrell whiskey, right there at the bottom, I'll see if I can take a picture of it and put a picture up there, there's a number right there. This is batch 4. So if you ever have a whiskey from Barrell and you want to know what batch it's from, look right there in the bottom and you'll see a subtle little number. So this here is from batch 4 and it is coming in at 56.77% alcohol or 113.54 proof. So this here is quite a strong cask strength whiskey. And I'll go into those oaks now, just real briefly. So American oak, so it was finished in 3 different types of oak, like I said. Originally it would have been American oak, giving you cinnamon spice, maybe cherry, bit of orange peel, and those kind of peanutty, bourbony notes you would expect. So it was finished in toasted American oak, which is going to double down on those flavors, but also European oak, so it was finished in French oak. So French oak gives different kind of flavors to American oak. It gives it almost like a dark chocolate, dark cocoa, earthy notes. If you ever have a red wine from France that was finished in oak casks, you're going to get those dark, earthy notes. It takes a red wine, which is grapes, and makes it more like a cherry. So that kind of makes it, takes everything and makes it a little darker. You get a bit of black pepper, you get those kind of earthier notes coming through. Whereas Mizunara is almost the other way. It's lighter. You get eucalyptus, green tea, almost tropical fruit notes coming through. You get different kind of flavors, because obviously wood will taste different, will give different kind of characters depending on where it's from, where it's grown, how dense the wood grain is. So you're going to get different flavors. So this here is like a bourbon, but a bit oakier and hopefully a little bit more interesting. So I think that's enough time talking about it. Let's go in for the nose on the Barrell Vantage. Cheers. Yeah, immediately, obviously it's not a bourbon, but it's a bourbon. You're going to get really heavy duty sweetness, you get this baking spice, you get creamy, rich almost. No, it's that's probably a little bit of that French oak giving you that creaminess, but it's like I said peanuts earlier. Sometimes on bourbons I'll get a peanut brittle where it's kind of caramelized peanuts and spicy. Here it's almost more like a peanut butter where it's creamier, it's rounded out, it's a little bit richer there on the nose. There is this really rich, almost chocolatey note. Like I said, that French oak gives you those darker notes, but it is like a dark, creamy chocolate, like a chocolate ganache, or one of those a truffle, where you get that heavy, creamy hit with a big hit of cocoa in there. It's quite syrupy. when I was thinking about this, when I was writing my notes for it, I was reminded, you know, movie theater popcorn. I'll see if not popcorn, sorry, movie theater cola. I'll put a picture of it up there if I can find one, where the cola comes out with sparkling water and this really, really thick syrup. That's the cola syrup. So it's like super concentrated cola, and that's kind of almost, I'm almost getting that where it's not fizzy yet, it's just really dark brown sugar, caramel, those really like the flavors of Coke with a little bit of like a herbal note from those Mizunara casks, giving it like that kind of Coca-Cola flavor, but just super dense and super concentrated in there. Like there's a little bit maybe of citrus peel, maybe a little bit, a touch of citrus peel. The ABV, like I said, 56.77% alcohol by volume, so it's quite heavy, but on the nose, you wouldn't really guess it. You might guess maybe like 50%. You might guess maybe like 45 to 50%, but here, with that higher ABV, it just feels like it's giving a lot of flavor. So I'm gonna go in for the palate and see if that changes and see if any of the flavors change. Cheers. It immediately feels like the nose, but then you get this big turn to spice. Like you get this big, syrupy, sweet, caramel, toffee hit as soon as it hits your tongue. And then as it spreads out, you get oak spice. You get like all those oak spice. You get black pepper, you get cinnamon, you get like clove, you get nutmeg, and you get those kind of herbal, like I said, eucalyptus, black tea, green tea. Those kind of notes you get from the Mizunara are all slightly spicy, but when put together with the spice of the French oak, the spice of the American oak, and the spice of the more American oak, you get a really spicy hit as it fits over your palate, and you get that alcohol. Like here, you can tell it's cask strength. You can tell this is quite heavy, meaty little whiskey with those really strong notes. Again, bit of citrus in there, but like I was surprised by how strong of a turn it was from that sweetness to the spicy notes. So I'm gonna go in again and see if I can focus on getting more of those kind of sweet flavors up front. Cheers. Second sip around, yeah, the sweetness is there, but it's almost more like maple syrup. So it was caramelly, toffee, that kind of note. Here it's more like maple syrup, where it is almost like an earthier, rounder bit of sweetness. Like there is, again, that alcohol burn, but you get that lightness, the sweetness. Like it's not super hot, like it is warming. I do feel it down there, but it's not like that's the only thing. It's not like I'm coughing, I'm not spluttering, I'm not going, oh my God, that's super high proof. I'm just like, oh, this is a nice rounded whiskey that comes in with a big punch of flavor. Like there's a little bit of fruitiness. Like on the second sip there, I held it in my mouth for a bit and I was getting like a stone fruit, almost like an apricot, like a peach, or that kind of like, you know, where you get close to the stone in the stone fruit, and it goes from being like a bright, juicy fruit into almost like a concentrated, syrupy, almost sour, almost tart flavor, like that kind of flavor where you get close to the stone in a stone fruit. There's like a little bit of like, it's like a citrus again, almost, if you imagine like a mix between like a grapefruit, a lemon, an orange, and like that center of a stone fruit, like there's a bit of fruitiness there, but like it's not super fruity. You do have to kind of look for it. So I'm gonna go in again, but this time I'm gonna focus on the finish. Cheers. Okay, so on the finish, like as soon as I swallow it, I get this big hit of like that peanut brittle, like not like a creamy peanut butter, but like that kind of like crunchy peanut butter where there's real like peanuts, sweetened, caramelized peanuts in there, and that fruity note. So I said on the palate, I kind of have to look for it. On the finish, take a breath, and you get those fruity notes. Not quite figs, not quite plums, but again, like that kind of bright, sharp, almost tart, citrusy, you know, stone fruit kind of note. You get that coming through. And then after a breath, you go that maple syrup again. Like it's weird, like on the palate, sweetness and then spice. And on the finish, the spice kind of fades. Like I'm still got that tingly, I've still got like ginger spice, bit of like black, but not black pepper, more like white pepper on the tongue there. But just nice, rounded, sweet. Like it's quite, I think quite cohesive, even though it is a blend with a bunch of different oaks. Like I think it is quite a cohesive flavor profile coming through on the finish. Like you get the same notes you were getting through the nose and the palate, but just kind of in a different kind of way, where getting a little bit more of the fruity note, a little bit of sweetness, a little bit of spice. Like it's just nice, and it is actually quite long. As I'm talking here, I'm still able to taste it. Before I give my final thoughts on the Barrell Vantage, although you might be able to guess, I do quite like it. If you're new here, scroll down, hit that thumbs up button, hit that subscribe button. I put out whiskey reviews like this every Wednesday, and I put out cocktail recipes featuring whiskey every Friday. So if you want to see more like that, make sure you hit that subscribe button and leave me a note in the comments below and say if there's any whiskies you think I should review in the future. But now, my final thoughts on this, like I said, I quite like it. Like, I have tried a few things that Barrell have put out, and I've never not liked one of their whiskies. Like, I think some of them I like better. Like, I think I like the Dovetail a little bit better than this. I might have to try them against each other, but this here, really nice. Like, it's interesting to see how different a bourbon can be just by introducing new casks. Like, just by introducing the French and the Mizunara oak, just by introducing those, it changes it from a bourbon into like a finished bourbon. Yes, obviously, but it gives it a lot more flavors. It gives it more depth, more complexity, and just lets you enjoy it a little bit more. So I'm gonna keep on enjoying it, and I'll see you next time. Sláinte.